I've become absolutely fixated on getting as many holes into these Monstera leaves as possible. Seeing as there's 3 vines, 2 main ones you can see and 1 little one in the middle, I'm going to separate them out, give them their own moss poles and also put them outside.
At least I won't have to water them.
Give me a hand with this. Okay. So the plan is, these old coir hanging basket things, just sort of separate them out a bit and wrap around this piece of drain pipe. Maybe pull them apart a bit so that you get like a flat piece, and then just tightly wire it round with the coir. Leave the twine, and then just leave about this much pot space at the end for. I'll give you a hand tying it. It might take one person to tie it. I've got this Monstera behind me, and it's probably the biggest one that I've actually got. And it's got 2 vines. I've taken tons of cuttings off it over the last 2 years, but it's still not got any of the really fenestrated leaves. I probably was taking too many cuttings off it. So I'm just documenting what I'm doing to try and get those really fenestrated leaves on it. And the first thing I'm going to try and do is to separate them out so that there's 2 vines, and I'm going to then repot one of them. The other thing that I've been doing is gradually letting it spend some time outside, because we're now into June. It's not really getting particularly cold, and obviously during the day it's perfectly fine. It's not so much the temperature that I'm worried about, it's the massive change in the amount of light that it's getting, because even in a shady spot it can often be way brighter than it would be indoors, for instance, often 3 times the amount. So you can see a bright spot indoors with a skylight right here. Now we're in the shade and it's going to be massively overexposed. The fenestrations happen because the plant is becoming, I don't know what you'd say, less juvenile. It's becoming, forgotten what the word is in botanical terminology for saying that it's basically older. Anyway, we don't need to get into that right now, so let's see whether I can separate the roots out carefully. Oh yeah, I also got a few of these stag's horn ferns because they were reduced. Didn't mean that they were necessarily good value, but it was £7.50, so I think that's quite good for this. I'm going to make a mount behind me so that I can make some sort of, I don't know what you could call it, a vegan trophy. Calathea with less than half price, about 1/3 of the price that it should have been. But, I mean, not that I would ever pay 32 quid for a little plant like this. But it's started to get the crispy leaves already, and for some reason I think that I'm Superman, and that a plant that normally is healthiest when you first bring it home, that I'll be able to somehow revive it, which is perhaps delusional, but you know, whatever. Starting to flower a little bit, so I'm just going to try and put it somewhere where it's got a bit more humidity, and I'm pretty sure that they've just potted it almost entirely in cocoa coir, which is a pretty crap potting medium, to be honest, so I might change that over at some point. And then this little Scindapsus, which has got this really beautiful, I don't know whether you'll be able to see it in the light, but you can see this reflective, almost like glittery effect close up on the leaves. Scindapsus pictus silvery Ann, it's called. And the way that they have tried to make it look quite bushy is to put several, I imagine that several cuttings that they've then placed into one pot so that it looks bushy, but I actually want it to be quite vining. So I'm going to see whether I can carefully separate out at least 1 or 2 of these. About 5 in this one little pot. So they're just going to crowd one another out, and I think that they'll be better to have their own root space, and then I could potentially get 5 plants rather than 1. Yeah, it was quite heavy. So I've got to try and get the nursery pot out of this little container pot. So I started off just taking out the canes that I was using to tie it up, and managed to get the perfect size nursery pot for this, but it's impossible to get it back out. Like, I think it's actually impossible with the plant in there. Potentially impossible. It's actually quite embarrassing that I filmed this. I'm wincing a bit watching it back. Jeez. So I ended up just pulling it out. Which, I don't know whether I can recommend you doing that, but you just have to sort of figure things out sometimes and try something out.
Oh, hello. What you got there?
I'm going to separate them. So you can see that I was just gently trying to get the compost away from the roots so that I could identify the roots and divide them up. There is actually a third one in there, but it's just got a tiny little leaf. See if I can.
Is it?
And as the plant becomes more mature and it puts on adult leaves, if it's given enough light, it will start to make those fenestrated leaves. So by taking it outside, I'm massively increasing the light, but also at night it's much more humid than it is in the house. So they're much more ideal conditions for the plant, even if you do it for just a few months of the year. I've gently shaken off all the roots and just teased them out like this. And I can actually see a tiny third plant in there that I just I just knocked the leaf off. But this is, in my thinking, is going to outcompete the other. Well, not outcompete. They're going to be in competition with one another. They'll perfectly happily coexist, but I want them to become plants with older, more developed material on them. So you can see that one. I'll just plant that as a little cutting in a small pot, and it can take its time to get big. But this is actually going to separate quite well, I think, from the look of it, if I'm careful. Well, I've got a decent amount of root intact for both of them. So now I've got two plants. I don't know why I didn't do this before, but I didn't. We'll see, I might regret it. They might be fucked afterwards. Go get a few pots. It's the slightly smaller one. Let's see. Quite cool, the gnarly roots anyway.
It's got more area.
Then we just need to pack in an open bag there if you want. Do it outside.
You've got a dirty hand already, so I'll hold it. You
can go outside and take it. I just need to pack it in.
I'll hold it, you pack it.
I'll get it way better. Like that. They've all got their own roots.
Yep.
So this is now going to be able to become taller. So hopefully it will then want to put more of those cool fenestrations on. This is something you've wanted to do with your houseplants, then I'll share the rest of the videos here where I'll let you know what the results are. Obviously can't do it yet because I don't know what they are. I managed to get quite a few plants out of the Scindapsus, which interestingly can become fenestrated when it gets old enough and tall enough. 6 out of that. And then just repotted them, just as I did with the Monstera. Better turn that off because the music's not copyrighted.